The Galactic Integration Academy was the largest military training center in the known universe. It sat on a planet called Valar Prime, a world with two suns that painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. The Academy's buildings were made of shining crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the training grounds. Species from 12 different star systems came here to learn how to work together, how to fight together, and how to survive together. Instructor Kethral had worked at the Academy for 40 years. He was a Velician, a species that looked something like a tall lizard with 4 arms and scales that changed color with his mood. On his home world, the Velicians were the top predators. They hunted in the deep oceans, striking fast and hard at their prey. Kethral was very proud of this fact. He believed that being a predator made his species better than others. Today, he stood at the front of a large classroom filled with alien cadets. There were Molvari, gentle 4-eyed creatures who ate only plants. There were Dreth, small beings who preferred to eat mushrooms and fungi. There were Keseth, tiny creatures whose skin glowed with different colors to show their feelings. And sitting in the 3rd row, there were 3 humans. Kethral looked at the humans with little interest. They were new to the galactic community. Their planet, Earth, had only made contact with other species a few decades ago. To Kethral, they looked weak. They had no claws. They had no sharp teeth. They had no armor on their skin. They were soft and small and fragile. Today we will talk about predators and prey, Kethral announced. His voice was a series of clicks and hisses, but the translator chip in his throat turned it into words everyone could understand. Every species falls into one of these categories. This determines how useful you will be in survival situations. He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed pictures of different species with labels next to them. The Molvari were marked as herbivores. The Dreth were marked as omnivores. The Velicians were marked as apex predators, and Kethral smiled when he saw this. Then the display showed the humans. The label said omnivores with a note underneath. Evolved as persistence predators. Kethral let out a loud laugh. His scales turned a shade of blue that meant he found something very funny. "Look at this," he said to the class. "The humans are listed as persistence predators. Do you know what that means?" The other aliens shook their heads. "It means they did not hunt like real predators," Kethral explained. "They did not chase their prey and catch it. They did not ambush it or overpower it. No, the humans would simply follow an animal and walk behind it. They would walk and walk and walk until the animal was so tired it fell down. Then they would kill it." He laughed again. How primitive, how sad. In the 3rd row, the 3 humans sat very still. Jake Bennett was a tall man with brown hair and calm eyes. Lisa Caldwell was a woman with red hair pulled back in a tight braid. Danny Ortiz was smaller than the other 2, with dark hair and a quiet smile that never seemed to leave his face. Jake raised his hand. "Yes, human?" Kethral said, still smiling. "Sir, I want to point something out," Jake said. His voice was polite but firm. "On Earth, humans are classified as apex predators. We hunted animals much larger than ourselves. We killed mammoths, which were like giant furry elephants. We tamed wolves and made them into dogs. We spread across our entire planet and became the dominant species." Kethral waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Yes, yes. By walking slowly behind things until they fell down." "Very impressive." The other alien cadets laughed nervously. "On Velis, we strike fast. We kill in seconds. We do not bore our prey to death." Lisa's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Danny just kept smiling that quiet smile. "For the survival examination next month," Kethral continued, "I will be assigning teams. The humans will be placed with more capable species who can protect them. Consider it a kindness." He turned back to his display. "Now, let us discuss proper hunting techniques. The class continued for another hour. Ketherall talked about how different species hunted. He praised the Velicians for their speed and power. He talked about the Dreth and their ability to find food in any environment. He barely mentioned the humans at all, except to use them as examples of what not to do. When the class finally ended, the three humans walked out together. They did not speak until they reached the human dormitory section, a small building at the edge of the academy grounds. "That was insulting," Lisa said once they were inside. Her voice was hard and cold. "He does not know any better," Jake replied. He sat down on his bed and looked out the window at the alien sky. "He has never seen what humans can do." Danny pulled out a small tablet and started looking something up. After a moment, he turned the screen to show the others. It was a video from Earth, showing wolves hunting an elk. The wolves chased the elk for a long time, working together, never giving up, until finally the elk was too tired to run anymore. "You know what the instructor does not understand?" Danny said softly. "He thinks hunting is about the moment of the kill, the violence, the blood." Lisa nodded slowly. "But that is not what hunting is about." "No," Jake agreed. "Hunting is about patience. It is about never stopping. It is about making your prey understand, deep in their bones, that there is no escape. No matter how fast they run, no matter how far they go, you will always be right behind them." Danny turned off the tablet. "I think Instructor Ketherall is about to learn why nothing on Earth ever wanted to see a human on the horizon." "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. "I mean that the survival examination is coming," Danny said. "And I think it is time to show the galaxy what persistence predators can really do." Jake smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had just spotted his prey. "Let him laugh now. He will not be laughing when he sees what we are capable of." Lisa's eyes were cold and steady. "On Earth, we have a saying. It is not the fastest animal that survives. It is not the strongest. It is the one that never gives up." The three humans looked at each other, and something passed between them. An understanding. A shared memory of what their ancestors had done, what their species had become, what they were still capable of when pushed. Outside, the twin suns of Velar Prime began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and purple. Somewhere in the academy, Instructor Ketherall was probably still laughing about the weak little humans who could not hunt properly. He would not be laughing for much longer. 3 weeks passed quickly at the academy. The cadets trained every day, learning about different planets, different climates, and different ways to survive in hostile environments. Instructor Ketherall continued to mock the humans whenever he got the chance. He called them slow. He called them weak. He said they would fail the survival examination. The humans said nothing. They trained harder than anyone else. They ran in the mornings when the other cadets were still sleeping. They studied the local wildlife until they knew every creature on the training list. They practiced making tools from sticks and stones, skills their ancestors had used thousands of years ago. The other alien cadets began to notice. They watched the humans with growing curiosity. These soft, clawless creatures did not act like prey. They acted like something else entirely. On the day of the examination, all the cadets gathered at the transport station. They would be taken to Nexar 7, a moon covered in thick purple forests. The moon had been designed for training. It had water, food, and shelter, but it also had predators. The cadets would have to survive for 5 days, find a hidden beacon, and signal for pickup. Ketherall stood before the assembled cadets, his scales bright with excitement. "I have assigned your teams personally," he announced. "Remember, the goal is survival. Work together, use your strengths, and do not get caught by the stalkers." The stalkers were the main predators on Nexar 7. They looked like large cats with 6 legs and special sensors on their faces that could detect body heat. They were fast and dangerous. Getting caught by one meant instant failure. Catherall read out the team assignments. Jake Bennett was placed with 2 Mulvari herbivores named Keela and Vaughn, and a nervous Dreth named Pip. Lisa Caldwell was assigned to a team of 3 Kesseth, the small glowing creatures who hated violence. Danny Ortiz was placed on Catherall's own observation team, where the instructor could watch him fail up close. "I expect the humans to struggle," Catherall said with a smile. "Please try not to slow down your teammates too much." The transport ships took off and scattered the teams across Nexar 7. Jake's team landed in a valley filled with tall purple trees and thick bushes. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. The 2 Mulvari immediately started looking at the plants, trying to find something safe to eat. "We should make a camp here," Keela said. Her 4 eyes scanned the forest nervously. "Find water, gather food, stay hidden." Jake shook his head. "No, we move." "Move where?" Vaughn asked. "The beacon could be anywhere on this moon." "Then we find it." Jake crouched down and looked at the ground. There were marks in the soft dirt, impressions left by something heavy. He touched one of the prints and studied it carefully. "Something large came through here, several somethings. They are heading northeast, probably toward water. The beacon will be near resources. We follow the trail." Pip the Dreth made a scared sound. "You want us to follow predators? That is crazy." Jake stood up slowly. Something in his eyes made the aliens step back without meaning to. It was a look they had never seen before. A look that was calm and cold and very, very patient. "On my world," Jake said quietly, "we have a saying. If you want to find the best hunting grounds, follow the hunters. If you want to survive, become the thing they fear." He started walking northeast. The others looked at each other, uncertain and afraid. But something about Jake made them follow. They did not understand it. But they felt safer walking behind this strange human than they did standing still. Far across the moon, Lisa faced a different problem. The 3 Kesseth on her team were named Liz, Tom, and Vera. They were gentle creatures who believed all life was sacred. They would not eat meat. They would not hurt any living thing. They flickered with frightened colors whenever they heard a noise in the forest. "We need to find food," Lisa said. They had found a small stream, and she could see fish-like creatures swimming in the clear water. "There is protein in this water. We should catch some." The Kesseth pulsed orange with discomfort. "We cannot eat other creatures," Liz said. "It is against everything we believe." Lisa did not argue. She simply picked up a long stick from the ground and began sharpening one end against a rock. The Kesseth watched her work, their lights flickering with confusion and growing fear. "What are you doing?" Tom asked. "Making a tool," Lisa replied. She did not explain further. When the spear was ready, Lisa waded into the stream. The water was cold, but she ignored it. She stood very still, watching the fish swim past her legs. The Kesseth watched from the bank, their bodies cycling through colors they had no names for. Lisa moved suddenly, faster than the Kesseth had ever seen anyone move. The spear shot down into the water. When she pulled it back up, a fish was stuck on the end, still wiggling. She caught 6 fish in 20 minutes. Then she carried them to the bank and began cleaning them with quick, practiced movements. The Kesseth huddled together on the other side of the clearing, watching with wide eyes as Lisa removed the insides of the fish and prepared them for cooking. "Where did you learn to do that?" Vera asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "My grandfather taught me," Lisa said without looking up. "We used to go camping in the mountains when I was young. He showed me how to hunt, how to fish, how to survive." She started building a fire using 2 sticks and dried grass. "These skills are very old. Humans have been doing this for 100,000 years. The fire caught, and Lisa began cooking the fish over the flames. The smell filled the clearing. It was a good smell, a warm smell, and the Kesseth found themselves moving closer to the fire despite their fear. "You killed those creatures," Liz said quietly. "Does it not bother you?" Lisa finally looked up. Her eyes were not cruel, but they were not soft either. "Everything dies," she said simply. "The fish would have been eaten by something else if I had not caught them. At least this way, their deaths serve a purpose. They keep us alive." She held out a piece of cooked fish to Liz. "You do not have to eat it. But you should know that your body needs protein to stay strong. Without it, you will grow weak. And when the stalkers come, weak creatures die first." Liz stared at the fish for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out and took it. The other Kesseth watched in shock as Liz raised the meat to her mouth and took a small bite. Tears ran down her glowing face as she chewed and swallowed. Vera and Tom rushed to comfort her, their lights pulsing with distress. But Lisa noticed something else. Despite their fear, despite their horror, the Kesseth did not leave. They stayed close to her fire, close to her spear, close to the strange predator who wore such soft skin but moved with such terrible purpose. They were beginning to understand why humans had conquered their world. Danny Ortiz was not supposed to be part of the survival examination. He was assigned to Instructor Kethral's observation team, which meant he would fly above the forest in a small shuttle and watch the other cadets struggle below. Kethral wanted to see the human fail up close, wanted to document every mistake for his reports. For the first 2 days, everything went according to plan. The shuttle flew lazy circles over Nexar 7 while Kethral and his 2 Velician assistants, Nessa and Torek, monitored the cadet teams through cameras and sensors. Danny sat quietly in the corner, watching the screens with that calm smile that never left his face. On the second night, everything changed. A massive storm swept across the moon without warning. The weather control systems had failed somehow, and the storm was far worse than anything the training protocols had planned for. Lightning split the sky in great purple sheets. Wind shook the shuttle like a toy. Rain fell so hard it sounded like rocks hitting the hull. The shuttle's engine failed. They crashed in the forest, tearing through trees and brush before finally coming to rest against a boulder. When the lightning finally stopped and the rain faded to a drizzle, Kethral crawled out of the wreckage and looked around with 4 wide eyes. "Report," he hissed at his assistants. Nessa was bleeding from a cut on her arm, but she could walk. Torek seemed unhurt but shaken. They checked the shuttle and found that the main power coil had fused during the crash. There was no way to repair it with the tools they had. "We cannot fly," Torek said. "We cannot call for help. The communications array is destroyed." "Then we wait," Kethral decided. "Rescue will come eventually. They will notice we are missing and send someone to find us." Danny climbed out of the shuttle and looked at the dark forest around them. His uniform was torn and dirty, but he seemed completely calm. He pulled out his small wrist display and checked their location. "Main base is 40 kilometers east," he said, "through heavy forest. There are at least 3 predator zones between here and there." "Then we definitely wait," Kethral said firmly. "Walking through predator zones would be suicide." Danny shook his head slowly. "The other teams do not know we crashed. They think we are still watching them from above. If any of them get into serious trouble, they will expect rescue that is not coming." He looked at Kethral with those strange human eyes. "My friends are out there. Jake and Lisa. I am not going to sit here while they might need help." "You cannot walk 40 kilometers through hostile territory," Kethral said. His scales had gone pale with disbelief. "The stalkers will catch you within the first hour." "Maybe," Danny said. "Maybe not." He began gathering supplies from the crashed shuttle. Water purification tablets, a thin emergency blanket that could serve as a rain cover, a length of wire, a small knife. He packed everything into a small bag and slung it over his shoulder. "What are you doing?" Nessa asked. "I am walking 40 kilometers through hostile territory." Danny looked at the instructor. "You can wait if you want, but I am leaving now." He turned and started walking east. Kethral watched him go, his scales flickering through colors that showed confusion, anger, and something he did not want to admit was fear. His assistants looked at each other nervously. "We cannot let the human die alone," Torek said quietly. "It would cause problems with the human government, diplomatic incidents, bad publicity." Kethral snarled, but he knew his assistant was right. With great reluctance, he gathered his own supplies and followed the human into the forest. Nessa and Torek came behind him, their movement slow and uncertain in the dark. They walked for 3 hours before Kethral demanded they stop and rest. His legs were burning. His scales felt dry and uncomfortable. He was used to short bursts of activity followed by long periods of recovery. This constant walking was torture. Danny had not even broken a sweat. He stood waiting for them, his breathing slow and steady, his face calm. "How are you not tired?" Kethral demanded. "This is nothing," Danny said simply. "On Earth, my grandmother used to run marathons, 42 kilometers. She did it for fun." "That is impossible. No creature can run that far." "Humans can." Danny's smile widened slightly. "Our bodies are built for distance. We sweat to stay cool. Our joints are designed for long travel. Our hearts pump blood efficiently for hours and hours. We are not the fastest creatures on our planet, but we can outlast anything." They continued walking. At kilometer 15, they reached the edge of a predator zone. Danny stopped and studied the forest ahead. Even in the dim moonlight, he could see the signs. Claw marks on trees, disturbed earth, the faint smell of musk. "Stalkers," he said quietly. "At least 4 of them in there." "We go around," Kethral said immediately. "There must be another path. Going around would add 6 hours to our journey. We do not have that time." Danny pulled out his small knife and checked the edge. "We go through." "Through?" Nessa's voice cracked with fear. "They will see us. They will chase us." "Yes," Danny agreed. "They will." "Then how do we survive?" Danny looked at her, and something in his expression made her scales go cold. "Do you know what persistence hunting is?" "It is what Instructor Kethral mocked," Nessa said. "Following prey until it collapses." "Yes, but it works both ways." Danny started walking toward the predator zone. "The stalkers are faster than us. They are stronger than us. But they cannot match our endurance. They sprint and rest, sprint and rest. We just keep moving." "You want to let them chase us?" Kethral could not believe what he was hearing. "I want them to try." Danny's voice was soft, almost gentle. "And when they are too tired to run anymore, when their legs give out and their hearts cannot take any more, we will still be walking. That is what persistence predators do, Instructor. We do not need to be fast. We just need to never ever stop." He entered the predator zone. After a long moment, the Velicians followed. The first stalker found them 20 minutes later. It came out of the darkness like a nightmare, 6 legs churning, heat-sensing pits fixed on their body warmth. It was huge, twice the size of Danny, with teeth like curved knives. "Run," Danny said calmly. "Not fast, just steady. Keep moving. Do not stop no matter what." They ran. The stalker chased, and it began. Jake's team reached the beacon site on day 3. They had walked for almost 70 kilometers through the forest. They had crossed 2 predator zones and waded through a swamp that came up to their chests. The 2 Molvari and the little Dreth were exhausted, their bodies pushed beyond anything they had ever experienced before. But they were alive, and they had learned things about humans that no textbook could ever teach. On the second night, a stalker had found their trail. It followed them through the darkness, a shadow with 6 legs and hungry eyes. The Molvari had wanted to hide. The Dreth had wanted to climb a tree. But Jake had kept walking, his pace never changing, his breathing never quickening. "It will catch us," Keela had whispered. "No," Jake had said. "It will try, and it will fail. The stalker had chased them for 6 hours. 6 hours of running through the dark forest, jumping over roots, pushing through bushes. The Molvari were crying by the end. The Dreth had stopped making sounds at all, but Jake just kept walking, always walking, never stopping. And then, as dawn broke over the forest, the stalker had collapsed. Jake had found it lying on its side, panting, its tongue hanging out, its 6 legs twitching weakly. It was too exhausted to move. Too exhausted to fight, too exhausted to do anything but lie there and wait for death. Jake had killed it quickly with a sharpened stick through the eye. Then he had shown the others how to butcher it, how to cook it, how to eat it. The Molvari were herbivores. They had never eaten meat in their lives. But something had changed during that long night of running. Something old and hungry had woken up inside them. They ate the stalker meat without complaint, and some part of them enjoyed it. When they finally reached the beacon site, they found another team already there. A group of Velicians led by a scarred veteran named Toreth. He looked at Jake's ragged group with contempt. "The herbivores and their pet human," Toreth said mockingly. "You look terrible." "We walked 70 kilometers," Jake replied. His voice was calm and flat. "Through 2 predator zones and a swamp. We ate a stalker." Toreth's eyes widened slightly. "You ate a stalker?" "It was tired. It fell down. We were hungry." Jake shrugged like it was nothing important. That night, while the Velicians slept, Jake moved through their camp like a ghost. He did not hurt anyone. He did not steal anything. He just moved things around, repositioned their weapons, opened their food containers, left small signs that he had been there. When the Velicians woke up and found their camp had been violated, Toreth confronted Jake with shaking hands. "You were in our camp. You touched our things." "Yes." "You could have killed us in our sleep." "Yes." "Why did you not?" Jake looked at him with those strange human eyes. "Because we are allies. Because this is training. Because I do not kill unless I need to." He paused. "But I wanted you to know that I could." Toreth never spoke to Jake again, but he never underestimated humans after that day. Lisa arrived at the beacon site on day 4 with her 3 Kesseth. The small glowing creatures had changed during their time in the forest. They moved differently now. They looked at the world differently. They had watched Lisa hunt, watched her kill, watched her survive with a cold efficiency that their peaceful culture had never prepared them for. One of them, little Liz, had eaten meat every day since that first fish. She no longer cried when she swallowed. She no longer flickered with distress. Something had awakened inside her, too, something her species had forgotten long ago. "Jake," Lisa said, nodding to him. "Lisa." He looked around the camp. "Danny?" "Not here yet." Lisa's eyes narrowed with worry. "He was with Kethral's team." "I know." They waited. Danny arrived on day 5, just hours before the extraction deadline. He walked out of the forest like he was coming home from a pleasant stroll. His clothes were dirty and torn, his face was scratched, but he was smiling, that quiet smile. Behind him came Instructor Kethral and the 2 Velician assistants. They were not the same beings who had entered that forest. Kethral's scales had turned a dull gray color. His 4 arms hung limp at his sides. His eyes were wide and empty, like someone who had seen something they could never forget. Nessa and Torek were shaking, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and something deeper than physical tiredness. "What happened?" Jake asked quietly. Danny shrugged. "We went through the predator zones." "All 3 of them?" "All 3. Nessa fell to her knees. Her voice was barely a whisper. "The human never stopped. Never. The stalkers chased us for hours. They were faster than us. They were stronger than us, but they could not match his pace. One by one they fell behind, collapsed. We begged him to let us rest, but he said if we stopped, we died. And the stalkers? Lisa asked. Kethral answered. His voice was hollow, empty of all pride. We ate them. Silence fell over the camp. Every alien was staring at the instructor. The human tracked them after they collapsed, Kethral continued. Found them lying in the dirt, too tired to move, and then he showed us how to butcher them, how to cook them over a fire, how to crack their bones and suck out the soft insides. His scales flickered with colors that had no name in any language. He cleaned every bone until it was white and shining in the firelight. Then he smiled and asked if we wanted more. Danny's smile had not changed. We were hungry. There was food. It seemed wasteful to leave it. Kethral looked at him with an expression that mixed terror and something that might have been awe. You hunted the hunters. You killed the killers. You ate the eaters. His voice dropped to a whisper. What are you? Danny's answer was simple. Human. The extraction shuttle arrived an hour later. As the cadets filed aboard, the aliens kept their distance from the three humans. They watched Jake and Lisa and Danny with new eyes, seeing them not as weak and clawless creatures, but as something far more frightening. They had laughed at the persistence predators. They had mocked the species that walked its prey to death. They were not laughing anymore. And somewhere in the back of the shuttle, Instructor Kethral sat alone with his thoughts, remembering the sound of cracking bones and the sight of white teeth gleaming in the firelight. He would never forget that smile. 3 days after the extraction from Nexar 7, Instructor Kethral called the three humans to his private office. It was a large room with windows that looked out over the academy grounds, filled with trophies and certificates from his 40 years of teaching. Once, these things had made him proud. Now they seemed small and meaningless. Jake, Lisa, and Danny sat across from him. They were clean and rested, wearing fresh academy uniforms. They looked like ordinary beings, soft and harmless. But Kethral knew better now. He had seen what lay beneath that soft skin. I asked you here because I owe you something, Kethral began. His translator struggled with the words because Velicians rarely said what he was about to say. I owe you an apology. The humans said nothing. They just watched him with those calm, patient eyes. I underestimated your species, Kethral continued. I looked at you and saw creatures without claws, without fangs, without armor. I thought this meant you were weak. I thought this meant you were prey. He paused, his scales flickering with shame. I was wrong. What changed your mind? Jake asked. His voice was polite but not warm. The forest changed my mind. Kethral leaned back in his chair, his forearms folding across his chest. I have spent the last 3 days studying your species. I read about your history, your evolution, your wars and your hunting, and your endless capacity for survival. He looked at Danny with those wide alien eyes. I read about persistence hunting, how your ancestors would track an animal for days, walking and walking under the hot sun while the animal ran until its heart gave out. I thought it was primitive when I first heard about it. Inefficient, the method of a species too weak to kill properly. And now? Lisa asked. Now I understand it was something far more terrible. Kethral's voice dropped low. You did not need to be fast. You did not need to be strong. You just needed to be patient. You just needed to never give up. The prey could run as fast as it wanted, hide wherever it wanted, fight as hard as it wanted. None of it mattered, because eventually it would get tired, and you would still be coming. Danny smiled that quiet smile. Our ancestors learned a simple truth. Everything gets tired eventually. Everything except humans. Yes. Kethral shuddered, his scales rippling with remembered fear. When those stalkers were chasing us through the forest, I thought we were going to die. They were so fast, so powerful. I have never run so hard in my life. He looked down at his hands. But you just kept walking. You never panicked. You never screamed. You just walked like you had all the time in the world. We did have all the time in the world, Jake said simply. The stalkers did not. No, they did not. Kethrall met their eyes again. One by one, I watched them fall behind. I watched their legs give out. I watched them collapse in the dirt, too exhausted to move, too tired even to be afraid. And then you walked up to them calmly, like you were approaching a friend, and you killed them. They would have killed us if they could, Lisa pointed out. It was them or us. I know, I understand. But it was the way you did it. Kethrall struggled to find the right words. There was no anger in you, no hatred, no excitement. You killed them like it was simply the next step in a process, like it was the natural end to a very long walk. Danny leaned forward slightly. That is exactly what it was. Persistence hunting is not about violence. It is about patience. The kill at the end is just the period at the end of a very long sentence. And then you ate them. Kethrall's voice was barely above a whisper. You built a fire and cooked their flesh and cracked their bones for the marrow inside. You made me eat them too. You needed the energy, Danny said. We still had a long way to go. I know. You were right. The meat gave us strength to continue, but watching you clean those bones. Kethrall trailed off, his scales going pale with the memory. You were so thorough, so efficient. There was nothing left when you were finished, just white bones gleaming in the firelight. Waste not, want not, Lisa said. That is another human saying. Kethrall was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost respectful. I have taught survival courses for 40 years. I have trained cadets from 100 different species. I have faced predators on a dozen worlds. I have never been afraid of any of them. He looked at each human in turn. I am afraid of humans. Danny's smile did not waver. That is probably wise. But I am also grateful. Kethrall rose from his chair, his 4 arms spreading wide in a gesture of formal Velician respect. You saved my life on that moon, Danny Ortiz. You could have left me behind. You could have walked away and let me die. Any other species would have. But you did not. You were part of my team, Danny said simply. That meant something to me. Even after I insulted you? After I mocked your species in front of the whole class? Especially after that. Danny stood and extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. You made a mistake. You learned from it. That is all any of us can do. Kethrall looked at the offered hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out with one of his 4 arms and took it. The human's grip was warm and firm, the grip of a predator who had chosen not to kill. What will you do now? Kethrall asked. Your performance on Nexar 7 has made you famous among the cadets. Many species are requesting human partners for their survival teams. Jake laughed softly. We will keep training, keep learning, keep showing the galaxy what humans can do. And what is that exactly? The 3 humans looked at each other, and something passed between them. A shared understanding, a connection that went back thousands of years to the first human who stood up on 2 legs and started walking toward the horizon. We endure, Lisa said finally. No matter what the universe throws at us, we endure, we adapt, we overcome, we keep walking when everyone else has stopped. Even when we should give up, Danny added quietly. Especially when we should give up. Kethrall nodded slowly. He had taught many lessons in his long career, but today he had learned one that he would never forget. Never laugh at a human, because the human will still be walking long after you have fallen. They will remember every insult, every mockery, every moment of disrespect. And when you finally collapse from exhaustion, when your legs give out and your heart cannot take any more. They will be standing over you with that calm, patient smile, and they will clean your bones until they gleam white in the light. Not out of cruelty, not out of revenge, simply because that is what humans do. They endure. They persist. They survive. And nothing in the galaxy can stop them.